Welcome to our first recorded lecture. And remember, Coach, are we the hugs or the kisses? Think about this cartoon just for a second. What do you have to understand about this in order to make sense of it? In order maybe to laugh about what's going on? We're going to discuss all these things in communication class this semester. Excuse the double negative, but so let's say you hole up in a cave somewhere in the middle of nowhere. You're actually communicating a message. You're communicating you don't want to be talked to. You don't want to talk to anyone else. So you're communicating constantly, whether you know it or not. Many people say that all communication is persuasive. You're walking down the hall, you see somebody you know or don't know, and you nod at that person. You're trying to persuade that person to notice you and say something. Acknowledge you, say hello, ask how you're doing. So we can think about this throughout the semester, that we usually communicate to persuade people. We bring our own biases. So look at the heading on this slide and think about what it says. What did you see? Did you see God is now here? Or did you see God is nowhere? The beauty of communication is the interpretation lies with the listener, the receiver of the communication. It's the same message, but different people are going to interpret it different ways. Communication is like a game of tennis, maybe, because we're smacking ideas and thoughts and statements back and forth to each other. Or is it more like a game of chess, where we make a move, ponder it, think about it, and then respond appropriately? We're going to get to some official definitions and some models of communication in a few seconds. So here's the textbook definition. The conscious or unconscious, intentional or unintentional process in which feelings and ideas are expressed as verbal and or nonverbal messages that are sent, received, and comprehended. Think about some of these elements in this. Conscious or unconscious, intentional or unintentional, verbal or nonverbal. Think about how many ways we communicate messages non-verbally to each other. Think about emojis, a way to communicate those nonverbal messages in the text-based system. We've got different levels of communication, and your textbook has more details about all these. Do you talk to yourself? Do you think to yourself? Then you're engaged in intrapersonal communication. Communication between two individuals is interpersonal communication. So notice the difference between intra, within, inter, between. There's small group communication, public communication, organizational communication, and mass communication. Again, we're going to talk about most of these in class sometime during the semester. So think about communication in a number of different ways. Communication is dynamic. It's always changing. It's continuous. It never stops. So again, the whole going back to that original thought, you cannot not communicate. Even when you're sleeping, you're communicating. Leave me alone. I'm trying to catch some shut-eye here. It's irreversible. Anyone who's put a text out there or posted something that you regret later, you know it's hard to get that back. It's interactive. Communication involves working with other people, either in person or via technology. And it's contextual. It's part of the human experience. So we communicate as part of who we are and what we do. So some basic ideas and some of the definitions of vocabulary. You encode messages. So you're thinking about what you want to say, like I'm trying to do right now by looking at these slides, thinking about, hey, I'm encoding a message to you about encoding. Right? We use our five senses as the primary signal system. We overlook a lot of those when we talk about communication, but smell and touch are important ways to communicate, even though we probably rely more on hearing and visual communication. And then we decode those and translate the message. So going back to the God is nowhere or God is now here statement. How do we decode messages? The process involves basically four different sort of elements. The source, the person doing the communicating. The channel, is it in person, face-to-face communication? Or is it via technology? Are you texting someone, Skyping someone, posting messages and statements on Facebook? The receiver, the person who receives the communication, who then becomes the source when he or she communicates back to you. And feedback, that information that gets back to you. If you say a sort of a joke and someone doesn't get it, their facial expression and their puzzlement, that's the feedback that you get, that maybe that joke didn't go over as well as you thought it might. So there's a lot of noise involved too, and not just physical noise. So there's environmental noise, which is that physical noise. So maybe a truck goes by while you're trying to listen to someone on the phone. or someone drops something outside, or the doorbell rings. There's physiological impairment. So maybe you're deaf, maybe you're blind. So you have an impairment to one of those senses that makes it harder to communicate using that sense. What about dialects and jargon? Maybe you've been to a foreign country and they speak a different language, or you've been to different parts of the United States and sometimes it's hard to understand what people are saying. As a reporter and also as a teacher, syntactical, the grammar. Sometimes I'm trying to read something a student has written and I really don't get it because the sentence is so messed up that I can't make any sense out of it. What about organizational noise? We're part of an organization here at Madonna University. There's certain expectations and noise involved here. Being a student, taking on that role. What about cultural noise? You're raised a certain way. Some cultures are very touchy-feely. Other cultures are more standoffish and, don't invade my personal space. And what about psychological noise? When you're hungry or you're tired or you're stressed, you don't listen as well. You don't hear as well. You don't communicate as effectively. Language has a lot of functions as well. There's emotive language, where you express your feelings and attitudes and emotions. There's phatic language, where you reinforce relationships, small talk, when your friends get together and you sort of chat. Cognitive, where conveying information. That's what hopefully I'm trying to do here, is do some cognitive language. Rhetorical, influencing your thoughts and behaviors. And identifying, the simple act of naming things, so we have a basis of communication and understanding. Going back to those hugs and kisses, those X's and O's. Some people see those as X's and O's as a football kind of thing. Other people see those as hugs and kisses. So let's look at a couple models. No, not those kind of models. No, not those kind of models. Let's look at 3 ways of sort of looking at communication, from linear, which is sort of the simple model, to transactional. So here we go. We got some models going here. Let's go back to linear. Simple message goes through, channels, encoding, perceived. There's noise all around, and we've got all these things in the background, this noise and things happening. Let's look at interactional. It becomes a little more complicated. The message goes back and forth now. We've got encoding and decoding, trying to figure out meaning, and then transmitting that messages. Again, surrounded by all that noise, all these sort of influences as well. And then we go to the transactional model, where things are going back and forth, nonverbal communications going on while we're speaking or talking, and the messages are being sort of taken back and forth. You're going to explore some of these in some of the assignments in the next section. So good luck with everything, and have a good time.